So, as you know, Russian state media is controlled by the state, and they're trying to project a particular narrative, a particular view. Well, sometimes, every once in a while, somebody says something that doesn't really line up, and then they have to clamp down on that person. This is a perfect example. They're talking about what happened at the Crocus Hall, the terrorist attack, and the host is surprised that somebody has a narrative different than the narrative that they want to project. Watch what happens when that happens. Okay, here we go. Special thanks to the Russian Media Monitor for creating the original clip. They do great work. All right, here we go. I want to start with a warning or non-warning by Americans that a terrorist attack was being prepared. Michael, look carefully. We aren't the ones who came up with it. This is the New York Times. The New York Times wrote the following. Put it up. Here it is. The adversarial relationship between Washington and Moscow prevented U.S. officials from sharing any information about the plot beyond what was necessary. Let's stop there. Yeah, there's a reason for that, because while the U.S. detected that there was a plot, they don't want to tip their hand about how they found out the information, because then Russia could use that against them in the future and prevent them from gathering other information that they were gathering. But they did share in good faith certain information about it to help them thwart a terrorist attack. Now, the context of the time, I understand. You're in the middle of a war. There's a proxy war as far as Russia's concerned with the United States, who is funding Ukraine. And they thought that this was kind of just some kind of psychological game, or they're trying to trick them or take their eye off the ball in Ukraine or something along those lines. So I get why Russia might have gotten it wrong, and they just got it wrong. So, but now they're trying to blame the U.S. for not giving them enough, when what could they really give? It's not like they're chummy with the, let's say, with the British. Okay, out of fear, the Russian authorities might learn their intelligence sources or methods. At the same time, they started to say that they did warn us more than once. It was also done in a sly way. First of all, they were warning their own citizens. Most interestingly, they mentioned crowded places and concerts. Okay, and that's right. They were telling American citizens, be careful, there is this possibility. And in doing that, they're making it public, as well as behind the scenes, they were talking to the Russians. The word concerts was highlighted, not something else, but specifically concerts. As a result, you saw it on March 7th in social media. There's a photo of one of the terror suspects at the Crocus on the evening of March 7. He was walking around and studying it. So basically, they were jointly working to find out what kind of emergency response there would be. What would be strengthened with additional guards? I think that this theory should be worked on, because the way the U.S. Embassy and other Western embassies behaved can be considered aiding and abetting terrorism. Really, they warned you, and you're trying to blame them. But this is the whole way that Russia does what they're doing with their propaganda. It's not our fault, it's their fault. You know how the West is, you know how America is. They're always doing this. It can be considered aiding and abetting, no more and no less. Yes, the first warning was to U.S. citizens. This is the response. But at the same time, simultaneously, through a closed channel between security services, information was passed between special services. What? Yes, it was general information, and the FSB admitted to it. It's strange you didn't know. Yes, I'm listening to you. Kornilov did not know this, but the FSB admitted it. Secondly, why wasn't it all of the information? There was general info, and it mentioned concerts. What else did you need? If after this, security measures at all concerts weren't strengthened, whose fault was that? Now, that's a great question. Whose fault? Again, I understand why Russia might not have acted on it, because maybe they think it's just American trickery, but they did try to warn them. Okay, now at this point, he's questioned the orthodoxy, and it's not going to be well received, so let's see what happens. This is your attempt to shift the blame to the U.S. when it isn't what you should be talking about. Instead of these absurd conspiracy theories, you should be talking about counterintelligence failures and about security measures at the Crocus. Well, you can't say that, can you? Well, he just did. Here's what's going to happen. That's what you should talk about. I understand. Can you hear me? I understand. I understood you, Michael, and I will answer you. Counterintelligence failures are out of the question. Of course they're out of the question because you can't question that in their system. You can't go up against the system because you just can't within this authoritarian system. They do acknowledge that there was a warning, but there is a comma. There was no specific information in this warning. This means I can warn you, Sergei Borisovich and Felix, be careful when you go outside. Because when you go outside, Michael, a car may run over you. You may hit your head on the corner of a building. Nothing specific, just be careful. Our counterintelligence admits there was a warning, but there were no specifics. A concert? Isn't that specific? A concert? Everything you say about how we should talk about security measures at the concert, we will figure out our problems on our own. That's not what we are discussing right now. Essentially, shut up, don't provide this counter narrative. We're trying to prove that the Americans were the bad guys for not telling us specific enough and then this thing happened because it's their fault. What you're saying, Michael, is exactly the same as the handwriting of those guys from the State Department who are trying to shift the blame. Refocus our attention on something else, but they're failing. Roman, if the US was behind this terrorist attack, we don't know yet. Note that I didn't say that. You said that. The last thing they would do is warn Russia. Well, doesn't that make sense? The last thing that they would do is warn Russia if they were behind it? If they were behind it, they'd be quietly sitting and looking at this terrorist attack. No, Michael, this is not right. Not right at all. We have a saying, a thief is the one who yells, catch a thief the loudest. The one who yells, catch a thief is a thief himself. That's why there were so many statements from your side. They could have made one statement and that's it. But no, you're doing it every day. Okay, this is imbecilic. It's like what do little kids say when somebody farted? I know this is a weird way to descend here, but he who smelt it, dealt it. He who denied it, supplied it, right? I mean, like, what kind of crazy argument is this guy making? Okay, but no, you're doing it every day, but you're not addressing key issues. Do you know what you're trying to achieve? Next time, the US won't share their data with you. Is that what you want? You didn't share it anyway. And Bordakov said so, Michael. In the past, we shared the info about the Boston Marathon terror attack. You should have done so too. And we did. No, you didn't. You did what? It said they were promised 500,000 rubles. It doesn't quite add up, especially being in rubles. I would agree with you if it was just something that was being said. When I see this terrorist say it himself, it's not just a conversation, it's a testimony or something that was just made up. Michael, either way, you participated in the creation of these organizations, these crazy sums from the Ukrainian side. Again, they're trying to pin it on Ukraine as if Ukraine had anything to do with it when Russia could have. It is possible that it was Ukraine, but it's also possible that Russia has other enemies beyond Ukraine who don't like it because of the way that they've acted in the past. Honestly, I suspect that when this man said 500,000 rubles, I think he just made it up. Here's what I am observing. Don't listen to anything these suspects may say. They're being tortured. They'll give it under torture. Their statements can't be taken into account. They obviously know what they'll say. Well, weren't they tortured? They obviously know what they'll say. Oi, Michael, let's not talk about torture. I'm just asking. You don't have a right to even say that word. After Abu Ghraib and Guantanamo, you'd better be quiet, Michael. Just be quiet. Look, they won't even let him speak at this point to defend his point because it's violating the state line, the state narrative, and you just can't have that. This has gone off the rails compared to what they thought the program was going to do. Is it wrong or not? Bortnikov says the danger of a terrorist attack is still present in Russia. With ISIS, you've created them and they're attacking you. What do you mean? No. He said no again. It's impossible. I won't talk to you anymore, Michael. You can't be so stubborn and impenetrable. It's not true. It is true. You've created ISIS. You've created ISIS. There is something I can agree with. No, Michael, that's it. I don't want to talk to you anymore. I was going to agree with you. No, I didn't want it. We'll be back in a few minutes for a commercial break. Wow, they can't even allow any other opinion unless it's an opinion that they've already allowed to be like that's a straw man that they can swat down. But otherwise, if it goes wrong, it goes wrong. Okay, tell me what you thought about this. What are your reactions to what you just saw on Russian state media? Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes, and the coffees. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.